When immigration is done well, it has been a gift for most of American history, a key element to the success and vitality of this amazing republic that we all inherit. But when it is abused, it can become a weapon, both a political weapon used by ruling class elites to punish regular people, and in far too many cases, a literal weapon used by foreign criminals to terrorize American citizens right here in our homeland. Those dangerous menaces, and they are legion all across America right now, they need to go, and they need to go right now. Let's talk real-world examples, not establishment or media narratives. Just before Thanksgiving of last year, innocent Americans lost their lives right here in the Phoenix area, killed by an act of reckless arson by an illegal alien, a migrant from Mexico who trespassed into America and then brought misery to an entire community. Joel Hernandez Anaya blamed his murderous actions on heavy drug use. He lit fire to a mobile home in North Phoenix, and it killed Sergio Zavala and David Estrada. Like every single illegal migrant crime, this tragedy, it was 100% preventable. Julio Rosas is an intrepid journalist. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps and is a proud American patriot. Julio, you have spent as much time at the border as just about anyone in media. What is your assessment of what happened at the U.S.-Mexico border under Joe Biden?
When Biden entered the White House in 21, I mean, right away, you could tell things were off. They said, oh yeah, our number of encounters for the month of February is 100,000. I'm thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. It's February. That's way more than what it normally is. And then, of course, by then, Biden tried to halt deportations for 100 days. Catch and release was reinstituted. So people were starting to see right away, I mean, a month into his presidency, oh, we can have a much easier time getting into the country legally than we did even under Obama or George W. Bush. That was the beginning of this 4-year-long crisis. And the thing that was so frustrating about it is that it was deliberate. It was deliberate through rhetoric. It was deliberate through policy of opening the border, having people willingly turning themselves in so that they could be processed by Border Patrol and then be released into the country. All of a sudden, we're seeing hundreds of people at one point crossing in broad daylight, having no fear because they're trying to
purposefully going to Border Patrol.
Trying to find Border Patrol. The most craziest example of this was when one night they were waiting at the border wall. They got tired of waiting for Border Patrol because Border Patrol wouldn't pick them up because they had so many people that were already processing. So they left the gap in the border wall, walked into town to find the Border Patrol station. And once they got to the sign that, designated that this is, the Yuma Sector Border Patrol station, they started cheering. They started calling their friends. They started taking pictures in front of the sign to show that they had made it. And then they went around to the door, knocked on it, and Border Patrol agent opened up the door, and then they just let them on in.
So the border guards became processors, became an Uber service for transporting them.
Yeah, exactly.
The Biden border chaos, it wasn't just incompetence. It wasn't just indifference. It was purposeful.
Absolutely. For example, for paroling people who are not U.S. citizens into the country, historically, that was on a case-by-case basis. That was, a dozen people a year, maybe. All of a sudden, we're mass paroling
not hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands of people who were not properly vetted, who may or may not have any sort of connection here to the United States in terms of friends or family that are already here. Meanwhile, they're flying them in directly into the United States. And as we've seen through many examples, they have gone out and commit horrific crimes.
Yeah.
The best example of that is Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is a violent gang from Venezuela, and it was primarily a Venezuelan issue, but then with the diaspora of Venezuelans leaving that country for obvious reasons, and they mostly settled in Latin America pre-Biden, and so guess who followed? Tren de Aragua. And so all of a sudden, Colombia, Chile, Brazil, all the other, Ecuador, all these countries where an excess of Venezuelans came from. So guess what happened when all of a sudden we started getting an excess of Venezuelans crossing illegally into the United States? We all of a sudden started seeing this gang called Tren de Aragua, which I cannot stress enough. This gang did not have a footprint in the United States prior to 2021.
Obviously, not all Americans agree with us, and some of them have resorted to violence to protest, particularly in places like Los Angeles, have used violence and staged riots against the Trump deportation agenda. Tell us what you saw in these riots.
Here in Glendale, they kind of had a street takeover, and the cops responded. A police cruiser was stolen. One of the protesters got in and drove it for a little bit, and then abandoned it.
You steal a cop car, you are not peacefully protesting,
No.
by definition.
No, not at all.
According to corporate media, immigration control is somehow racist, right? And it's anti-brown, it's anti-Hispanic. Your reaction?
It's not, because the United States is my country. I was born here. When I enlisted into the Marines, it wasn't into the Mexican Marines. It was the United States Marines. When I swore an oath to the Constitution, it wasn't to the Mexican Constitution. It was to the United States Constitution. I think it's actually the most pro-Latino thing to want to get the border under control, to keep the bad people out, because it's my country. And these are the values that I hold dear. When I was in Yuma, one of the hospital administrators, they gave us a tour. They were $23 million in debt for services rendered to these illegal immigrants. And they weren't just like treating cases of dehydration. They were doing heart transplants. They turned an entire floor into a maternity ward because they didn't have prenatal care prior to, so they were trying to catch up. And it was obviously a big hassle. Residents of Yuma were told you have to go to a hospital in Phoenix, which is 2.5 hours away, because they either had to reschedule important medical, like serious medical appointments. They had to either reschedule or they had to cancel them, and they had to go to all the way here, right?
How about instead we deport the illegals and we prioritize taking care of our own people? The open borders radicals. They try to use all kinds of sophistry and word games to pretend that illegal aliens pose no material dangers to Americans. For instance, they dishonestly argue that the illegals are somehow less dangerous than our fellow American citizens. Realize that it's an absurd comparison anyway, because every single assault upon our safety that is perpetuated by an illegal alien, it's completely and totally unnecessary. If that perp is not allowed to saunter into America uninvited and unvetted, then the crime never happens. But because of decades of lawlessness, because the ruling class of America actually wants an open border, we have seen tens of millions of illegals pour into our country. That flow of illegals, it has been a disaster that is sadly fully supported by the permanent political class in America for far too long. It is a true bipartisan failure, with the open borders radicals co-opting both the Dems and the Republicans, with the leftists seeking masses of new voters and the supposed conservatives bowing down in supplication to the business magnates who demand a constant flow of cheap labor to undercut American citizens in the job market. Of course, Joe Biden accelerated all of this madness to a record degree, and his radicalism was assisted by allies across the country, mayors and governors who prioritize an extreme agenda over the safety of U.S. citizens. Corrupt governors like Katie Hobbs right here in Arizona. Now, for many Americans, the consequences of that border bull rush, they have been nothing short of devastating. Right here in Phoenix, ICE has gotten very busy with removals, prioritizing the most dangerous illegals first. People who traipsed into America without permission and then had the audacity to commit additional serious crimes right here in Arizona and all across America. Now, naturally, many have serious records in their home countries, including terror activities, murder, and rape. The Biden-Harris administration admitted to Congress that over 13,000 known convicted murderer migrants now reside in the United States outside of immigration detention. Since President Trump took office, the U.S. Attorney in Arizona indicted over 500 illegals, all of whom have records, all of whom pose clear and present dangers to this American community. Here's how local Fox 10 News in Phoenix described that surge in law enforcement. Quote, "What's changed under President Trump is a new surge in funding and resources that allows ICE and Border Patrol to spend more time targeting the big fish, the bad actors, and the serious criminals." One of the serious criminals was just nabbed here in Arizona. Michelle Armando Santander Ortega, wanted for murder in his home country of Mexico. Now he's cuffed, stuffed, and removed by ICE through the new commitment of President Trump to protect Americans. The bad guys and the serious criminals, and we cannot be afraid to use those phrases and to speak those truths, because there are legions of bad guys who have been allowed to just ignore our laws and procedures for far too long. They've been hiding in plain sight in so-called sanctuary cities and sanctuary jurisdictions. Many of these dangerous illegals, they cross here in places like Arizona, but they end up all over America. No one should presume that the dangerous illegals are merely an issue for the border areas. No. For example, Jose Antonio Ibarra, the scumbag cretin who savagely killed Laken Riley, he was transported on your dime and at his request to New York City after trespassing into America. He was then arrested there in New York, but the so-called sanctuary city of the Big Apple did not turn him over to ICE for swift removal. Instead, they set him free with absurd no-bail rules to roam American streets and to terrorize American citizens, which he did in Athens, Georgia, another sanctuary city that flaunts federal law and endangers citizens. He was arrested there yet again, and yet again, simply released. In an unprovoked attack of sheer horror, he mercilessly beat Laken Riley to death as she went for a run in broad daylight on a seemingly safe campus at the University of Georgia. Far away from that tragedy, in Los Angeles, California, another young American woman was brutally killed by a dangerous illegal. Her name was Sandra Duran. In another preventable murder, 5-time deported Estuardo Alvarado killed Sandra, a young mother, an American citizen. Estuardo had been charged with over 20 crimes before he killed Sandra. If this were not a sanctuary city, this would not have happened. Note that Miss Duran, like many of the victims, like the victims here in Phoenix, she was Hispanic. Sadly, that circumstance is normally the harsh reality of illegal alien crime. They mostly terrorize the people near them, which is why Hispanic citizens of this country suffer the ravages of this radicalism disproportionately. Steve Montenegro is a legal immigrant to America and the current Speaker of the House of the state of Arizona. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for doing this interview. Did you ever believe that a boy from El Salvador could become the Speaker of the House of one of the most important states in America?
I believed it because I was told from the moment I arrived here by my parents that this is the greatest nation on earth and that you can dream as big as you want to, as big as you can. You just have to be willing to work just as hard or even twice as hard to achieve those dreams and goals.
So, Steve, you as a legal immigrant to this country, what is your view of illegal immigration?
I've learned in my heart that the best thing you can do to honor immigrants, to honor immigration, is have a system that respects everyone equally. That opportunity that was given to me, I want to make sure that it's there for everyone. And the best thing I can do is respect the rule of law, which is what makes this country so great, right? Becoming a citizen isn't about having a list of benefits. Becoming a citizen, they understand, is a responsibility. Becoming a citizen, now you have the weight of liberty in present tense and for future generations over our shoulders. This Constitution given to us, afforded to us by blood, sweat, and tears, lives that were sacrificed, and hundreds of years of study as to how to put a republic together. This that's been given to us now, it outlines a process. It outlines dignity of life. It outlines respecting an individual. Here's what my dad used to tell me, Steve, it is impossible to go hungry in this country. It is impossible to go hungry. If you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to dream big, you can succeed.
Many jurisdictions around the country, particularly large blue cities, are so-called sanctuary cities. What is your thought regarding law enforcement and what they have to deal with in those places?
It's not just heartbreaking, but it's infuriating. Because here you have men and women that you have recruited to serve on the front lines of freedom, whether it is the military, whether it is border, whether it is our counties, sheriffs, or law enforcement in our cities and towns. You've asked them, please keep us safe. But on the other hand, you've told them, but you can't use any tools to keep us safe. Please walk into the line of fire for us, but you can't defend yourself. It's reckless, criminal, it's infuriating. And to have politicians that are willing to use these subjects and at the expense of law enforcement it's unacceptable.
Is your governor one of them? Is Katie Hobbs one of these reckless politicians who's endangering the citizens because of a radical agenda of open borders?
When you don't take the steps to protect law enforcement and to say we need a secure border, knowing what's happening at the border, how can you not say that that's reckless? When we have children being trafficked at the border, I think that's reckless. You can't go around it. We sent out a bill to the governor that said we are going to designate drug cartels as terrorist organizations here in Arizona, and she vetoed that. How can I not say that's reckless?
Let's talk solutions. So with President Trump in office, with Tom Homan as the borders are, in my mind, we need internal enforcement, meaning the bad guys have to go. Your thoughts?
They have to go. I mean, there is no option here. There is no gray area. There is no middle ground. But when we're talking about known criminals, people that take others' lives, people that traffic fentanyl, we're losing an equivalent of a 9/11 amount of lives every month to fentanyl. I mean, there is no gray area here. Find them and get them out of here. We're going to do everything possible to help our federal administration, President Trump's administration, and Tom Homan achieve the goals of keeping Americans safe. And I think people are serious about having secure borders, safe communities, and that's our pledge, that's our heart, that's what we're going to continue to do.
This reality unmasks the complete lie of the leftists who pretend that border enforcement is somehow about race or ethnicity. Now, the family of Maria Gonzalez, they know the truth all too well. Maria was a wonderful, innocent, 11-year-old American girl, raped and murdered in her own bedroom by Juan Carlos Garcia Rodriguez, an illegal alien adult who was smuggled across Biden's open border as a minor and then released into the interior of America before he commenced on a life of violence and mayhem. Getting back to the issue of the crime rate of illegals, eminent scholar John Lott published a detailed statistical analysis of violent crime rates right here in Arizona, and he determined that the crime rate for illegals was more than twice the rate for the demographics of native-born citizens of Arizona. I could spend hours detailing illegal alien crimes for you, both the most horrific, violent ones and the more mundane, everyday offenses, ones that still diminish the quality of life here in our homeland. But instead of an endless list of these crimes, it is critical for us to hear the stories of those most affected by this scourge of preventable violence. Josephine Dunn is an angel mom who lost her daughter Ashley to a fentanyl overdose death. Ashley was only 26 years old and a young mother. Josephine has channeled her sorrow into fierce advocacy for strong borders and immigration enforcement.
Thank you for asking about her. She was 26. She was poisoned on Sunday, May 23rd. And then 86 hours later, my husband and I had to disconnect her life support from one half of one counterfeit Percocet tablet. That half had 5 milligrams of fentanyl, enough to kill 2.5 people.
Why put fentanyl into a Percocet?
So it's a very cheap high, number one. It's a very addictive high, number two. Number three, the cartel doesn't care if they die. It's just the cost of doing business. They're making so much money. This guy over here is buying 100. This guy's trying it for the first time and dies because he used 1 pill. They don't care. This guy's still buying 100.
Yeah.
Right now, the DEA says 7 out of 10 pills are deadly. And we're confiscating thousands of pills in Arizona.
Do you blame Mayorkas and Biden individually? Do you blame them for your daughter's death?
Absolutely, I do. Partially, they're responsible. They should have secured that border so the drugs didn't come across. They knew it was a problem.
The law named after your daughter. Tell us about that, please.
The first-time offender, it's a minimum sentence of 5 to 15 years with no early release. That's the first time if you get caught trafficking. The second time, if you get caught, the sentence is between 10 and 20 years. This law is putting tremendous amount of people behind bars. I don't take no for an answer. I just don't. And I will never stop fighting to save lives. If it's just one,
Yeah.
then I did something good, right? Ashley will not have died in vain.
More than anything, we need to regain control over our streets, over our safety, and over our border. Most of us are the products of immigration. And when it is done correctly and done legally, it can be a source of untold dynamism for the American way of life. Naturalized citizens who come to this country legally, they have historically brought amazing gifts and benefits to our land, and they can continue to act as brilliant innovators and solid neighbors into the future, but only if we end this current crisis and we fully support the important work of ICE and other law enforcement agencies in expediting deportations of those who came here illegally. Patriots, we lock our doors at night, not because we hate those on the outside, but rather because we love those on the inside. Why wouldn't we follow the same sensible logic and practice for our national home, our nation, the United States of America?